Hey guys, welcome back to another interview. I'm Zay. Today I have Liana Adams. So, Liana, I just want you to give a little bit of your background about what you do, who you are, and how you got into the NFT space.
Yeah, so thanks for having me. I'm Lianna, and I've been in the NFT and Web3 space since 2021. And over the last few years, I've been serving as an advisor to ArtXV, a neurodivergent collective in the Web3 space, and I'm vice president and curation lead at the Dream Conduit, a nonprofit helping creatives to enter the Web3 and NFT space through education and guidance to empower creatives with what they need to thrive in this space, right? I'm really passionate about driving growth and innovation for NPOs, NGOs, NFT projects, artists, and platforms. But what I really want to do is to cultivate a humanity first culture within our communities that we live in. I come with over 20 years experience in various industries. I've developed art collections for Christie's, BAFTA, and I've also created my own art fair. So yeah.
Wow. 20 years is a long time. Amazing, like to be doing this. So, thank you so much for giving your background. I want to know, can you share one of the biggest struggles that you've seen surrounding minting and maybe a solution for that for these creators?
Yeah, so minting can be such a daunting process, right? And as artists, if we're not careful, we can fall into the minting analysis paralysis trap, And I think one of the biggest struggles is determining like which platform, which chain to mint on, whether it should be on ETH or TES, and which marketplace and pricing and edition size, right?
Mhm.
Um, there is no one size fits all approach to all of this at the moment, and we're still building the plane while flying it, right? So this is the time to really explore and experiment, and every artist is different, so you can't really compare yourself to the next artist, right, in terms of your work, so I think what I usually find, with artists is they do get very uh, how do you say, like, insecure, I guess, just not knowing where to go, right? But it really depends on their body of work, so and also I guess in a way it's like to decide on minting, you've also got to have the ETH to pay for gas fees, right?
Yeah.
So when it comes to like the marketplace, it's really simple. It's try everything, but then at the same time, it's what can you afford at that time, right? If you can't afford gas fees, then you've got to go to a marketplace that's got lazy minting, for example, right?
Mhm.
But the one thing is just experiment, and explore all these different platforms and the different chains as well, because we're early, and for all like 5 years down the line or 3 years down the line, whichever, it's all changing again, right? Um, so and then coming to pricing and edition sizes, I normally don't really try to influence that decision because it should come from them, right? It's their work,
Mhm. Right.
um so one thing I would always encourage them to do is to lay everything out in a virtual gallery and to have that
Mhm.
overview, of the entire series or collection, and then make a decision from there. Because once you've seen your body of work, then you're like, okay, this resonates more with, like, this platform, for example, right?
Mm, yeah.
Yeah.
Wow, that's great. That's something that I've never heard to do is to kind of set it all out in almost like a template type of form to see
Hmm.
like what the aesthetic is and what the vibe of it is.
Yeah.
That's a great strategy, because one of the questions I was going to ask is, what are some strategies or practices that you have around that? So that is a great tip, and I hope that people watching, take that advice and try to do that. So you talked about pricing, which, like you said, is also very
Mhm.
daunting for artists. So what
Mhm.
strategies do you have around pricing? I know you said it really depends on them, but what do you think it's a good I guess, path to take in deciding what to price their pieces?
Well, with pricing, again, also it's very personal,
Mhm.
and I think with the strategies, it's not too dissimilar to the traditional art world, right? Where you've got to look at your costs and the value of the work, and reputation and historical and cultural relevance. So you take all the that into consideration, and with NFTs, especially because we're so new, I'm gonna be like a broken record, right?
Yeah.
We are really new, um, and there's no set way again, to do things. It is really about experimenting, and just having maybe different price points as well, so that you kind of reach a wider audience, because it's
Mhm.
all about discoverability, right? Back in the day, like, okay, I say back in the day, it's just 2021.
Right.
They were talking about, like, oh, if you're on ETH, you shouldn't be on TES. You're going to confuse the collectors, but even the collectors are new, right?
Yeah.
So we is really a time to explore, and if I were to pinpoint a few factors, I would say, maybe understanding the value, right, of
Mhm.
the work first, so that can be quality. And quality again can be very subjective. It just refers to like the level of skill and craftsmanship, and then there's also rarity. So works that are one of a kind, or in limited editions, are usually considered more valuable than those that are mass produced, right?
Mhm.
And that could also be, the materials that was used, right?
Right.
And I mentioned earlier, like historical and cultural significance. It the work can be valuable, um, because of its significance, right?
Right.
So, for example, works that are associated with important historical event, or cultural movements can,
Yeah.
command high prices.
Right.
And I guess, understanding that the value also comes from emotional appeal.
Right.
It can be it can be a influence. So that is, subject matter, use of colors, and it's basically what really resonates with the collector, right?
Mhm.
um you know it, Pricing NFTs is an evolving field,
Yeah.
and I just want to, you know kind of repeat myself and say that there's no one size fits all approach.
Mhm. Yeah.
But I think these are some of the strategies that you can kind of apply,
Yeah.
in working out the price of your
Yeah.
NFTs, of your art.
So earlier you mentioned lazy minting. Did I get that correct? So
Mhm.
what exactly is lazy minting? Because I personally have never heard of that term before.
So lazy minting is when, you know, for example, on OpenSea, I think OpenSea is the only marketplace that does lazy minting.
Mhm.
So you only pay the gas fees for one transaction, like, to start, right, to list
Yeah.
your NFTs,
Mhm.
and after that, like, what happens is, usually when you mint something, you've got to pay the gas fees, you've got to pay this other fees, and blah blah blah. What happens with lazy minting is that goes to the collector. Whoever buys it
Yeah.
will pay for the gas fees, and yeah, so that
Okay.
cost is
Oh,
taken out
wow.
from
Okay, perfect. Yeah. One thing also, just to stick with the gas fees, 'cause I've seen a lot
that.
of
Mhm.
artists kind of say, well, why does the gas fee price range, have a different, it can be $3 one day or it could be $12 one day. So do you have any strategies on like the time of day to mint or things like that when it's best to mint on the chain?
Well, usually around, 4, 5 in the morning, like Eastern Standard Time. That's when there's not a lot of traffic, right?
Okay.
On the blockchain. So, or well, I mean, if there's a huge drop, for example, right,
Right.
that's going
Hmm.
to affect like, the gas fees as well. So it's just really, um, yeah, just being mindful, like,
Time of
yeah,
day, right? Well, thank
yeah,
you for that because being with Makerspace and working with these artists, you really come to know the struggle areas and the questions that they have. And that I think minting and pricing and all of that is so huge because of course artists want sales. So I'm glad that you said it's not it's a one size thing, right? Because I think a lot of
mhm,
artists see like I can make money and they think that there is this perfect concoction to getting a big sale, but really it depends on you, it depends on your research, it depends on the collectors. There's so many different factors, and
mhm,
you are your own independent contractor. Like that's always what I say. So this is
yeah,
your brand, this is your
yeah,
business, so you
yeah,
have to do what works for you and you cannot compare yourself to other people. So those
absolutely.
those tips were literally perfect. So to keep it pushing, what do you think is the most important step for creators to take after they mint?
Get the work out. you
Right.
know
Mhm.
because no one's gonna know that it's out there if you don't, if you don't tell people it's out, right?
Mhm.
So that would be, maybe coming up with a good social media content plan,
Mhm.
joining spaces and, community spaces, talk about work, writing about it, just really getting it out there, right? And maybe even submitting the work for exhibitions, right?
Mhm.
So the more eyeballs you have on your work, the better, because you're casting the net wide, right? And what a lot of artists forget to do is to talk about their work,
Yeah.
or they get really uncomfortable talking about themselves, or they were, then talk about the creative process, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And for those who are a little bit shy, I would really recommend, as you're creating the work, to just do a couple of videos, right? To start getting content so that you can use that once you've minted.
Yeah, that's great. I know a lot of artists are like, they kind of want to shy away from social media because they just want to create. And that's great. You love your art, you want to create, but that's a big part because, like you said, you're minted, but no one knows. So now you have to build your brand and talk about yourself and tell your story. So I think that's a good tip that if you are shy, to just talk about the creative process, right? Because that's
Yeah,
interesting. Sometimes we see a piece and people, collectors, are probably thinking, wow, how did you get this to look like this,
absolutely.
right? Like, how did you do
Yeah,
this? So yeah,
yeah,
that's great. Like, these tips are really awesome, and I really hope that people are writing notes, because this is huge. This is the biggest part to being an artist is pricing and minting, how to put yourself out there. So you mentioned that you were the vice president for ArtXV, right? So please tell us more about that and the inspiration behind its start and like what you guys stand for.
Well, so ArtXV is a neurodivergent collective in Web3, and how it started was Ava, the founder. This was during lockdown, and and what she discovered was her sister, who's a nonverbal, who autistic, artist. She didn't even realize that she could do art, right? So when
Yeah.
she saw these little sketches, she started reaching out to more people who were also neurodivergent, to basically have a little space for them, to level the playing field for them, so that their voice and their stories can be heard as artists. So
Wow, that's
that's yeah,
amazing.
that's
Yeah.
RXV. Yeah.
Um, in our program, we have a Discord server, and there was one of our members who mentioned that they were neurodivergent and how they struggle
Mhm.
sometimes to keep up with everything that's going on. And so it seems like it's a part of the NFT space that isn't talked about, and I think you guys shining the light on that is amazing because there are a lot of people who may be neurodivergent and have a huge talent in art to create. And it can be a space where they feel comfortable and they feel heard and seen. So I think that that's a beautiful initiative being a part of the NFT space. And I know people in our program that can see this, we can send them over to ArtXV where they can take a look and see what it's about.
Mhm.
So yeah, that
Yes, I mean, we've partnered up with Google Arts and Culture, to
mhm,
showcase, the work of the artists, and we've put them in, exhibitions, and we've done campaigns for them. So, it's really having that sense of belonging, right?
yeah,
And to know that just because you're neurodivergent, you're not going to be turned away, right?
right.
Because in the traditional art world, many times they'd rather have someone else, and they won't really give neurodivergent artists the time of day, right? So yeah, that's pretty much the mission of
Yeah,
ArtXP.
because really the NFT space is huge on community. You need your community, people
Mhm.
to network with. So it's important that they have a community as well. And that doesn't stop them from feeling almost a sense of normalcy like everyone else
Mhm.
has. Because a lot of
Yeah.
times people make them feel like ostracized because of this thing
Yeah.
that's a part of them. So that's amazing. I love it. So just to wrap it up, do you have any resources available for creators to help them with their Web3 careers?
Yeah, I actually have a couple of artist guides on my website. So if you go to lianna-adams.com /resources, you'll find a lot of reading materials about, NFTs, about metaverse, AI, and yeah, the artist guides as well.
Perfect. So, do you have any social media platforms that you'd like to share? Because I'm going to put it on the screen so they can follow you and keep up with you.
Yeah, so I'm on Twitter. The handle is at Lala underscore Adams 27. And on Instagram, I'm Liana dot artside, I think.
Okay, well,
Yes.
I'm gonna check and make sure, and I'll make sure I put it right on the screen. So thank
Thank
you so
you.
much again, Liana, for doing this. I really believe
Thank you.
everything that you shared was really valuable, and I believe you guys are going to see a little bit more of Liana because we definitely want to, work together. We have a little bit more in store for you guys, the members of the program. So thank you for your time.
Thanks
Thank
for
you,
having
everyone
me.
who. Yes, you're welcome, of course. Thank you to everyone watching the interview for continuing to tune in and be a part of the program. We'll see you guys in our next interview. Bye.
Bye.
Perfect. Okay. Let's see if it